The golden envelope felt heavier than it should have as Maya Chen tore it open at the elegant Christmas gathering, her smile fading frame by frame as her eyes scanned the document inside divorce papers, signed by her husband Daniel, gifted to her by his mother Eleanor Westbrook in front of 40 distinguished guests, who now watched with expressions ranging from shock to barely concealed satisfaction. And in that devastating moment, as champagne glasses froze mid-air and whispers began to slither through the marble-floored ballroom, Maya didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't fall apart as everyone expected. Instead, she looked directly into Eleanor's cold gray eyes and said with a voice steady as steel, "Thank you for this gift, Eleanor. I'll treasure it always," before walking out of the Westbrook mansion with her head held impossibly high, though inside, her heart was shattering into a million irreparable pieces. 3 years earlier, Maya Chen had been a kindergarten teacher from a modest family in Portland when she met Daniel Westbrook at a charity event where she was volunteering and he was reluctantly attending at his mother's insistence. Their connection had been instant and electric, two souls recognizing something profound in each other, despite coming from worlds so different they might as well have been separate planets. And when Daniel looked at Maya, he saw someone genuine and warm in a life filled with pretense and cold ambition, someone who laughed freely and loved deeply and didn't calculate the social value of every interaction. And when Maya looked at Daniel, she saw a gentle man trapped inside expectations he never asked for, yearning for something real in his gilded cage. And so they fell in love with the reckless abandon of two people who believed love could conquer any obstacle, any difference, any disapproval. Eleanor Westbrook had made her position clear from the moment Daniel first mentioned Maya's name over dinner at their family estate. The Westbrook fortune had been built over 4 generations of strategic marriages and calculated alliances, and Eleanor herself had been selected by Daniel's grandmother to marry Richard Westbrook, not for love but for the merger of 2 powerful textile empires. She had done her duty, produced an heir, maintained the family's social standing with iron discipline and flawless appearances, and she expected nothing less from her only son. So when Daniel announced his engagement to a kindergarten teacher who drove a 10-year-old sedan and had student loans and came from a family that had never even owned property, response was a masterclass in restrained fury. She didn't scream or threaten, she simply said, "This too shall pass," with the certainty of someone who had always gotten her way. The wedding happened anyway because Daniel, for perhaps the first time in his 32 years, stood up to his mother, but Eleanor's acceptance was merely a strategic retreat, not a surrender. And from Maya's first day as a Westbrook, she experienced what it meant to be an unwanted addition to an elite family. Every dinner became an opportunity for Eleanor to highlight Maya's lack of sophistication. Every family gathering included pointed questions about when Maya would quit her little job and focus on charity committees and country club memberships. Every interaction was laced with subtle poison that left Maya questioning her worth while Daniel remained painfully oblivious, trained since childhood to not see his mother's cruelty, because acknowledging it would mean acknowledging his own cowardice. For 2 years, Maya tried everything to earn Eleanor's approval. She took etiquette classes in secret, studied wine and art, and all the things that seemed to matter in this new world. She organized charity events that raised record amounts. She learned the names of every family friend and their children, and their preferred topics of conversation. She bent and shaped and diminished herself in 100 small ways, hoping that eventually Eleanor would see her worth. But the more Maya tried, the more Eleanor seemed to resent her, because Maya's efforts only highlighted her determination and intelligence, qualities that threatened Eleanor's narrative of the gold-digging social climber who had manipulated her naive son. The cracks in Maya's marriage appeared slowly. Daniel traveled constantly for business, or so he saddened. When he was home, he was distant, exhausted, Preoccupied with problems he never shared, Maya tried to reach him. Tried to recreate those early days when they would talk for hours about everything and nothing. But somewhere along the way, Daniel had stopped fighting for them. Worn down by his mother's constant pressure and his own inability to choose definitively between the two women who wanted entirely different things from him. And Maya began to feel like a ghost in her own marriage, present but unseen, speaking but unheard. The Christmas party where Eleanor presented her devastating gift was supposed to be different. Maya had spent weeks planning a special announcement. She was pregnant. 8 weeks, along with the child she and Daniel had been hoping for. The child she believed would finally bridge the impossible gap between their families. She had worn her best dress, a deep burgundy silk that she couldn't quite afford but bought anyway because she wanted to look perfect when she shared the news. And she had been so nervous, so hopeful, so utterly blindsided when Eleanor clinked her crystal glass and announced she had a special gift for her daughter, handed her that golden envelope with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and waited with barely concealed anticipation for Maya's destruction. Later that night, alone in the small apartment she had kept, despite Eleanor's objections, thank God for that small rebellion, Maya finally allowed herself to fall apart. And as she cried on her bathroom floor, hand pressed against her still flat stomach, she made a decision that would change everything. She would not beg, she would not plead. She would not give Eleanor the satisfaction of seeing her broken. She would sign those divorce papers, yes, but she would also build a life so extraordinary, so undeniably successful, that one day Eleanor Westbrook would have to acknowledge that she had been wrong about Maya Chen. The next 3 years became Maya's Phoenix story, a metamorphosis powered by equal parts determination, heartbreak, and the fierce mama bear love for the daughter she named Lily. Born 7 months after that terrible Christmas night, she started small, using her teaching skills to launch an educational consulting business from her apartment while Lily napped, creating curriculum materials that made complex subjects accessible and engaging. Her first client was a local elementary school struggling with literacy rates, and when Maya's program increased reading proficiency by 40% in 1 semester, word began to spread. Then another school called, then another, and within a year, Maya had hired her first employee. The growth was exponential because Maya poured every ounce of her being into building something meaningful, not for revenge, not anymore, but because she had discovered her own capabilities, her own strength, her own vision. And it was intoxicating to realize that all those years of trying to fit into Eleanor's world had obscured the fact that she was perfectly capable of building her own. Her company, which she named Bright Horizons Education, specialized in creating inclusive learning environments for children with different learning styles. And as her reputation grew, so did her client list, eventually including some of the most prestigious private schools in the country, the same schools that educated the children of families like the Westbrooks. Meanwhile, Daniel had tried to reach out exactly 3 times after the divorce was finalized. The first time was a drunk voicemail 6 months after the Christmas party, rambling and apologetic and infuriating in its inadequacy. The second time was a formal letter from his lawyer when he learned about Lily, requesting a DNA test that Maya cooperated with fully because she had nothing to hide. And the third time was an invitation to coffee that Maya declined because she was finally at peace and didn't need to reopen old wounds. She sent him photos of Lily every month because that was the right thing to do. But she asked for nothing, not money, not time, not the validation she had once craved so desperately. The transformation in Maya extended beyond business. She had finally learned to see herself clearly, not through Eleanor's dismissive gaze or Daniel's passive acceptance, but through her own eyes. She saw a woman who had survived public humiliation with grace, who had built an empire while raising a child alone, who had faced her darkest moments and emerged not bitter but better, and somewhere in that journey, the revenge she had initially craved transformed into something far more powerful: indifference, not the cold kind, but the peaceful variety that comes when you realize someone's opinion of you says everything about them and nothing about you. It was an ordinary Tuesday when Maya received the invitation. Thick cream cardstock with elegant gold lettering announcing Eleanor Westbrook's 75th birthday celebration at the Grand Rosewood Hotel, one of the most exclusive venues in the country. Maya stared at it for a long moment, assuming it was some kind of mistake, but the handwritten note inside was unmistakably Eleanor's precise script, simply saying, "Your presence is requested," and Maya's first instinct was to decline, to protect the peace she had worked so hard to build. But then Lily wandered into the room, now 2.5 years old, with Daniel's blue eyes and Maya's stubborn chin, and asked, "What's that, Mama?" And Maya realized that avoiding the Westbrooks forever meant denying her daughter the chance to know her father's family. And didn't Lily deserve better than the cycle of resentment and rejection? The decision to attend took a full week of internal debate, consultations with her therapist, and one very long phone call with her best friend, Jessica, who alternated between supportive and threatening to show up as her bodyguard. But ultimately Maya chose to go, not for revenge, not for validation, but because she wanted to model courage for her daughter. To show Lily that you could face people who would hurt you without losing yourself. That forgiveness wasn't weakness, but the ultimate strength. The night of Eleanor's 75th birthday arrived with the kind of perfect autumn weather that seemed almost scripted, and Maya dressed with care but without anxiety, choosing a dress that was elegant without being flashy, confident without being aggressive. She looked in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back, not because she was unrecognizable, but because she was finally, fully herself. And then she picked up Lily, who was adorable in a tiny blue dress that matched her eyes, and together they walked into the storm. The Grand Rosewood Hotel was everything one would expect from a Westbrook celebration: cascading floral arrangements, a live orchestra, champagne fountains, and 200 guests who represented the absolute pinnacle of society. Maya felt the familiar prickle of inadequacy for exactly 3 seconds before remembering who she had become. And then she stepped into the ballroom with Lily in her arms, and a smile on her face that was genuine, because it came from a place of peace, not performance. The whispers started immediately. Of course they did. Maya Chen was a legend in these circles. The woman who Eleanor Westbrook had publicly humiliated, and who had somehow, impossibly, built an educational empire now valued at over $50 million. Several guests recognized her from business conferences and magazine features, and the cognitive dissonance of seeing the scorned ex-daughter-in-law rubbing elbows with tech moguls and education reformers was visible on their carefully botoxed faces. But Maya didn't engage with the whispers. She simply moved through the room with grace, stopping to chat with the few genuine people she recognized, introducing Lily to anyone who asked. Daniel found her first, and Maya would be lying if she said her heart didn't skip when she saw him across the room, walking toward her with an expression she couldn't quite read. He looked older, tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion, and when he reached her, his eyes went immediately to Lily, with a hunger that was almost painful to witness. This was his daughter, the child he had chosen not to fight for, and the weight of that decision was written all over his face. "She's beautiful," Daniel said, his voice rough, and Maya simply nodded, because what else was there to say? They stood in awkward silence for a moment before Daniel took a deep breath and spoke again. "I was a coward, Maya. I let my mother dictate our marriage, our divorce, everything, and I'm not asking for forgiveness, because I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that not a day goes by that I don't regret my choices." And Maya looked at this man she had once loved so desperately, and felt something unexpected not for the husband who had abandoned her, but for the broken son who had never learned to stand on his own. I forgave you a long time ago, Daniel, Maya said softly, and she meant it. Not because he deserved it, but because she deserved the freedom that came with letting go. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It means I've released the pain you caused me. It doesn't mean I'll pretend it didn't happen, or give you access to our daughter's life, without proving you've changed. And Daniel nodded, tears in his eyes. Accepting boundaries, he had no right to negotiate. The moment everyone had been waiting for arrived when Eleanor Westbrook made her entrance, resplendent in diamonds and designer couture, surrounded by admirers who had come to pay tribute to her power. She moved through the room like a queen receiving subjects, and Maya watched her approach with a calm she had earned through years of rebuilding herself from the ashes of Eleanor's destruction. When Eleanor finally reached them, her eyes flickered over Maya with an expression that was impossible to read, lingering on Lily with something that might have been curiosity or might have been calculation. Maya, Eleanor said, her voice as cool and controlled as Maya remembered. I wasn't certain you would come. Neither was I, Maya replied. And there was a moment of charged silence before Maya continued. But I decided that holding on to resentment was too heavy a burden, and I'd rather show my daughter what grace looks like than teach her to hide from her past. Something shifted in Eleanor's expression, a crack in the porcelain facade she had maintained for 75 years, and for the first time, Maya saw the woman behind the monster not evil, but terrified. Someone who had built walls so high, she had forgotten there was anything beyond them. Someone who had sacrificed love for status so many times, she had forgotten what love felt like. Someone who looked at her great-granddaughter with longing and regret, and the dawning realization that her legacy of coldness had cost her something precious. The climax came unexpectedly, not from Maya's revenge, but from Eleanor's collapse. The carefully constructed facade crumbling in public for the first time in 7 decades. I was wrong about you, Eleanor said, and the words seemed to cost her everything. I was wrong, and I was cruel, and I told myself it was for Daniel's own good. But the truth is, I was afraid that if Daniel chose love over duty, it would mean that I had been wrong to choose duty over love all those years ago, and I couldn't bear to face that possibility. The ballroom had gone silent, 200 guests witnessing something unprecedented, Eleanor Westbrook's vulnerability, and Maya could have used this moment to strike, to humiliate the woman who had humiliated her, to finally achieve the revenge she had dreamed of in those dark early days. But as she looked at Eleanor's trembling hands and the tears gathering in her carefully made-up eyes, Maya realized that revenge would only keep her trapped in the past, would only perpetuate the cycle of pain that had already claimed too many casualties. Eleanor, Maya said, and her voice carried clearly through the silent room, I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because life is too short to hold on to bitterness, because my daughter deserves to know her family, if that family is willing to change, and because I believe that people can grow, even when it seems impossible. The woman you were 3 years ago hurt me deeply, but I'm choosing to believe that the woman standing before me now is capable of being different. Not because you've earned it, but because holding on to anger was poisoning my own happiness. What happened next would become the stuff of legend in society circles for years to come. Eleanor Westbrook, the Ice Queen, the woman who had never shown weakness, embraced her former daughter-in-law in the middle of her own birthday party, and for a long moment, they stood there, 2 women who had been enemies, choosing a different path, and when they separated, Eleanor looked at Lily and asked, with a humility that seemed foreign on her lips, May I hold my great-granddaughter? Maya looked at this woman who had caused her so much pain, weighed the risks against the potential for healing, and made the choice that only the truly strong can make. She said yes, and as Eleanor carefully took Lily in her arms, something in her face transformed, years of coldness melting in the warmth of an innocent child's trust, and Maya saw a glimpse of who Eleanor might have been if she had chosen differently all those decades ago. The rest of the evening unfolded like a dream. Not perfect, but real. Conversations that began to bridge impossible gaps. Connections tentatively forming where there had only been walls. Daniel asked if he could be part of Lily's life. Properly this time, and Maya agreed to let him try. With boundaries and therapy and slow, careful steps. Eleanor sat with Lily on her lap for an hour, learning about the little girl's favorite colors and stories and songs, and for the first time looking genuinely happy rather than merely satisfied as Maya prepared to leave. Eleanor caught her arm one final time. "Why?" she asked, and the question contained multitudes. "Why did you come, really, when you had every right to hate me forever?" Maya considered the question carefully before answering. "Because 3 years ago, you gave me divorce papers wrapped in a golden envelope. And at the time, I thought it was the worst moment of my life. But it turned out to be the beginning of my real life. The life I was meant to live. So in a strange way. Your cruelty was the catalyst for my transformation. And I didn't come here to show you how successful I've become, or to make you regret what you did. I came here because I'm genuinely grateful for who I am now. And part of who I am is someone who believes that every person deserves a chance to grow, including you." Eleanor's eyes glistened as she processed Maya's words. "I wasted so much time," she whispered, "chasing status when I could have had love." "The time ahead doesn't have to be wasted," Maya replied. "That's the beautiful thing about transformation. It's never too late to begin." The drive home was quiet. Lily asleep in her car seat, the city lights blurring past the windows, and Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From a heartbroken woman on a bathroom floor, to a successful entrepreneur. From a rejected daughter-in-law, to someone who could offer forgiveness without sacrificing her dignity. She had wanted revenge, once, had dreamed of making Eleanor suffer. But the reality was so much better than revenge could ever be. She had found peace, and purpose, and a love for herself that no one could take away. The greatest revenge, Maya realized as she carried her sleeping daughter into their home, isn't making your enemies suffer, it's becoming so happy that their opinion of you becomes irrelevant. It's building a life so full of meaning that the pain they caused becomes just one chapter in an epic story of triumph. It's showing up at their party, not to gloat, but to demonstrate that you've grown beyond their ability to hurt you. And if, in the process, you can offer them grace they don't deserve, you prove that their cruelty didn't diminish you, it refined you into something stronger, kinder, and infinitely more beautiful than either of you could have imagined.